Trust ends before love does. The monthly financial report always arrived on the third Tuesday. I learned to expect it the way you expect rain in April. Inevitable, unremarkable, part of the architecture of shared life. It would appear in both our inboxes at 6:47 p.m., timestamped identically, subject line reading Q3 portfolio summary or year-end tax projections in that plain font accountants seem to favor. Stephen had been handling our finances for 6 years. He was efficient and visible, the kind of professional presence you stopped noticing because everything simply worked. The house smelled like garlic and butter that evening. I was at the sink, hands submerged in dishwater that had gone from hot to tepid, watching headlights sweep across the kitchen window as cars turned onto our street and continued past. My phone sat face up on the counter beside a half-empty wine glass, its screen dark. His keys hit the bowl in the entryway, that familiar ceramic sound that meant he was home. The refrigerator hummed its constant note. The clock above the stove read 7:23. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears, one small truth at a time. We had built something ordinary together. That was the point. After years of uncertainty, his career changes, my health scare, the miscarriage we never quite discussed, we had finally arrived at stable. We ate dinner at the table most nights. We split the mortgage and the grocery bills and the small decisions that accumulate into a life. On Sunday mornings, he made coffee while I read news on my phone, and we existed in the comfortable silence of people who no longer needed to perform for each other. The house was a renovated Craftsman on a street lined with maples, the kind of place we'd stretched to afford because we believed in investing in permanence. His office was upstairs. Mine was the converted sun porch. We had separate work lives that overlapped in practical ways. Shared calendar, joint accounts, the accountant who kept everything organized so we didn't have to think about it. Stephen sent his reports like clockwork. We both glanced at them, nodded at the numbers, filed them away. It was the machinery of adult life running smoothly in the background. I didn't know then that this would be the last night I slept well. He came into the kitchen carrying his laptop bag, loosening his tie with one hand. Traffic was hell, he said, which is what he always said. I heard him open the refrigerator, the sound of a bottle being twisted open. He stood behind me for a moment. I could feel his presence there, the warmth of another body in the space. And then he moved to the table, sat down, opened his computer. Stephen sent the quarterly report, he said. I dried my hands on the towel hanging from the oven handle. I saw the notification, but I hadn't opened it yet. And when I finally did, hours later, after dinner had been eaten and dishes stacked in the drying rack after he'd gone upstairs to shower, and I sat alone with my laptop in the dimness of the living room with only the table lamp on, I noticed something that shouldn't have mattered. The email had been sent only to him. Stephen's message sat in my husband's inbox. The CC line, which had always included both our email addresses for as long as I could remember, was empty. Just his name in the to field. Just him. I stared at it. I told myself there was an explanation. Stephen had made a mistake. Or there was a second email he'd sent just to me that had somehow been caught in spam. Or this particular report only concerned accounts in my husband's name. My brain offered these reasons like gifts, like small mercies, and I accepted them because the alternative was too strange to consider. I checked my spam folder. Nothing. I checked my inbox again, scrolling back through 3 weeks of messages. The previous month's report was there, sent to both of us, as always. I opened that one. Then the one from 2 months before that, both sent to both of us. Every report for 6 years, addressed to both our emails, our names appearing side by side in the CC line, like proof that we were a unit, a couple who shared accountants and mortgages and futures. Except this one. I closed my laptop. The house was quiet except for the sound of water running upstairs. He was still in the shower. I sat in the yellow circle of lamplight and felt my heartbeat arrive in my throat, insistent and uncomfortable. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself it meant nothing. After that night, I started paying attention. The next morning, over coffee, I mentioned it casually. Did you get Stephen's email last night? Mm-hmm. He was reading something on his phone, not looking up. He only sent it to you. He glanced at me then, just briefly. Did he? Yeah. It wasn't CC'd to me. Huh. He took a sip of coffee. Probably just a mistake. Probably. He smiled, that familiar morning smile, sleepy and distracted. and returned to his phone. The moment passed, but something in his tone, in the quickness of his dismissal, stayed with me. It was too smooth, too unrehearsed, as if he'd been expecting the question. By the time the leaves changed, I had learned to watch for patterns. Little things. The way his phone was suddenly always face down on surfaces. The way he'd started closing his laptop when I walked into a room, even if he was just reading news articles. He'd always been private about work, but this was different. This was intentional concealment dressed as habit. There were new passwords on accounts I used to have access to. When I asked about it, he said his company required updated security protocols. Reasonable, believable. The kind of lie that sounds like truth because it contains just enough detail. He started working late more often. Not dramatically, just an extra hour here and there, enough to shift our routines slightly. Dinner moved from 7 to 8. The sound of his key in the door arrived. Later found me already in pajamas, already half ready for bed. I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for a restaurant we'd never been to together. When I asked about it, he said it was a business lunch. Of course it was. I folded it back into the pocket where I'd found it. The accountant's name began appearing in his phone notifications, brief messages that flashed across the screen and disappeared. I caught glimpses. Thanks for clarifying, and does Thursday work? And once, just once, looking forward to it. I told myself these things were innocent. I told myself that accountants and clients communicate. I told myself that my suspicion was a personal failing, a kind of paranoia born from too much time alone in my head. But late at night, when he slept and I didn't, I would lie there in the dark and replay moments. The way he'd smiled when I mentioned Stephen's name last month. The way his voice changed when he took certain phone calls. Softer, more careful, as if he were aware of being overheard. The way he'd started buying different coffee, a brand I didn't recognize, and when I asked about it, he said Stephen had recommended it. Stephen, who I'd never met in person, who handled our money from some office downtown I'd never visited, who sent reports and tax forms and financial advice in clean, professional emails that arrived like clockwork, until they didn't. I wanted to be wrong. I needed to be wrong. So I said nothing. Some weeks later, he mentioned he had a meeting with Stephen. Tax planning for next year, he explained. Just routine stuff? Should I come? I asked. He paused. It was barely a pause, maybe half a second, but I felt it. You don't need to. It's pretty dry. I don't mind. I know, but you're busy, and honestly, it's just numbers. I'll fill you in after. I nodded. I said okay. I watched him leave that Thursday afternoon, wearing the shirt I'd bought him for his birthday, the one that fit him perfectly. And I wondered if he'd chosen it deliberately. I wondered if he knew I was wondering. He came home 3 hours later. His collar was slightly wrinkled. There was a brightness to him, an energy that hadn't been there in months. He kissed the top of my head as he passed, a gesture so familiar it hurt, and said the meeting had gone well, that Stephen thought we were in good shape for next year. That's good, I said. Yeah. He opened the refrigerator, stood in its light. Stephen says hi, by the way. Stephen says hi, as if we knew each other, as if there was a personal connection that extended beyond spreadsheets and tax codes. Tell him I say hi back, I said, and hated how my voice sounded. Thin, false, testing. In the quiet that followed, I realized I'd been performing normalcy for weeks. Maybe longer, we both had. Our conversations had become scripts, carefully written to avoid the questions that mattered. We asked about work and weather and what to have for dinner. We discussed the leak in the upstairs bathroom and whether we should repaint the bedroom. We said I love you at the expected moments before sleep, before leaving for work. And the words hung in the air like obligations fulfilled. Love didn't vanish. It just stopped being the reason we stayed. The confrontation happened in the kitchen on a Sunday morning. I hadn't planned it, but I'd been checking our joint credit card statement online, something I did occasionally, mindlessly, and I saw a charge for flowers. Expensive flowers, from a boutique florist downtown. The date was last Thursday, the date of his meeting with Stephen. I walked into the kitchen where he was making coffee, my laptop still open in my hands. Who did you buy flowers for? He turned. The coffee maker hissed behind him. What? Last Thursday. There's a charge for $200 at a florist. His face did something complicated, a micro-expression I'd never seen before, there and gone in an instant. Then he smiled, and the smile was careful, calibrated. Oh, those. They were for the office. Someone's birthday. Whose? Rachel's. She's been there 15 years. I looked at him. He looked back. Neither of us moved. That seems expensive for a coworker, I said. It's a big deal. 15 years. The coffee maker beeped. He turned to pour himself a cup, his back to me. I watched his shoulders, the familiar shape of him in his weekend flannel shirt, and felt something in my chest begin to crack. You've never bought flowers for a coworker before. I've never had a coworker hit 15 years before. What kind of flowers were they? He paused, cup halfway to his mouth. What? What kind did you buy? Roses, I think. Does it matter? Roses are romantic. They're also just flowers. He set the cup down, turned to face me. What is this really about? Stephen only sends financial reports to you now. There it was. The real question, finally spoken aloud after weeks of silence. It sat between us like something living. He blinked. What? The accountant. He used to CC both of us on everything. Now he only sends things to you. So? So why would that change? I don't know. Maybe he's streamlining. Maybe he figures one of us doesn't need to get duplicate emails. It's not streamlining, it's exclusion. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. His face had gone carefully neutral, the expression of someone choosing their words with precision. You're reading into things that aren't there. Am I? Yes. Then why do you close your laptop when I walk into a room? I don't. You do. All the time. And your phone is always face down now, and you changed your passwords, and you bought expensive flowers for someone on the same day you had a meeting with our accountant, who says hi to me even though I've never met him. The words came out faster than I'd intended, each one building on the last, and I heard the paranoia in my voice, the desperation, and hated it. But I couldn't stop. He was quiet for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. Outside of me stood a car door slammed. Someone laughed. I changed my passwords because of work security, he said finally, his voice very level. I closed my laptop because I'm taking a break. My phone is face down because I put it down without thinking. You're connecting things that aren't connected. Then why do you seem different? Different how? Distant. Like you're here but not really here. He rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture I knew meant he was tired of the conversation. I'm stressed about work, that's all. Is it? Yes. Swear to me. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I couldn't name. It might have been guilt. It might have been pity. It might have been the exhaustion of maintaining a lie he no longer had the energy to sustain. I swear, he said, but he didn't move toward me, didn't reach for my hand, didn't do any of the things that would have made the promise real. I closed my laptop, set it on the table, walked past him, out of the kitchen, up the stairs to our bedroom. I heard him call my name once, soft, uncertain. I didn't answer. Years can pass inside a single evening. After that morning, we lived like polite strangers, sharing a space. He slept on his side of the bed, I slept on mine, and the distance between us felt oceanic. We spoke in practical sentences. I'll be home late, and can you pick up milk? And the plumber is coming Tuesday. The machinery of shared life continued, but its gears ground against each other, metal on metal, producing friction instead of motion. I stopped checking the credit card statements. I stopped watching his phone. I stopped asking questions because I was afraid of the answers, and also because I already knew them. 3 weeks after our kitchen confrontation, I saw them together. I wasn't following him. I wasn't playing detective. I'd gone downtown to meet a friend for lunch, and I was early, and I was walking past a cafe when I saw them through the window. He was sitting across from someone, a man, younger than us, dark hair, good suit. They were laughing. Actually laughing, heads tilted close, the body language of people comfortable with each other in ways that exceeded professional courtesy. Stephen. Had to be. Who else? I stood on the sidewalk and watched them for 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. I watched my husband's face light up in a way it hadn't in months, maybe years. I watched him gesture with his hands the way he used to when we were younger, when he still told me stories about his day, when I was the one who got that version of him. I watched him lean forward, say something quiet. Watched Stephen reach across the table and touch his hand, just briefly, just a moment, and watched him not pull away. Then I turned and walked in the other direction. I didn't go to lunch. I called my friend from my car and said I was sick, which was true in a way that had nothing to do with my body. I drove home and sat in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. The house was empty. I walked through it room by room, touching things. The couch we'd picked out together, the bookshelf he'd built, the framed photos on the mantle showing us at different stages. Younger, hopeful, smiling at a future we thought we understood. I found myself in his office upstairs. I hadn't been in there in weeks. It smelled like him, his cologne, his laundry detergent, that specific scent of his presence. His desk was organized the way he always kept it. Laptop in the center, lamp to the left, a few pens in a cup, a small stack of folders. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The top folder was labeled Tax Documents. I opened it. Inside were the usual things: W-2s, 1099s, receipts, statements, and underneath those, printed emails from Stephen. Dozens of them. I read through them slowly, methodically, feeling sick. They started professionally. Attached is your Q1 analysis. Here's the updated projection. Let me know if you have questions. Then, slowly, they shifted. Thanks for lunch yesterday. I enjoyed our conversation. Let's find time to meet again soon. And then, I think about Thursday all the time, and this is complicated, I know, and I can't keep pretending this is just professional. And finally, dated 2 weeks ago. I'm falling for you. I need you to know that. I closed the folder, put it back exactly as I'd found it, left the office, walked downstairs, made myself tea I didn't drink, sat at the kitchen table and stared at nothing until the light changed and the shadows grew long and I heard his key in the door. He came in carrying takeout. I thought we could have Thai tonight, he said, setting the bags on the counter. That place you like. I looked at him. He looked back. I saw you today, I said. He froze. What? Downtown, at the cafe on 5th. You were with Stephen. The bag sat between us. The smell of basil and lemongrass filled the kitchen. He didn't speak. I read the emails, I continued, my voice steady despite everything. The ones in your office, in the tax folder. His face went pale, then red, then something else, resigned, maybe caught. He pulled out a chair, sat down slowly, heavily. How long? I asked. 6 months. 6 months, half a year. All those late nights, those closed laptops, those face-down phones, all of it real, all of my suspicions confirmed. Is it serious? He nodded, couldn't look at me. Do you love him? His silence was answer enough. Do you still love me? He looked up then, and I saw tears in his eyes, which somehow made it worse. I don't know how to answer that. Try. I do. I think I do, but it's different with him. He stopped, started again. I didn't mean for this to happen. No one ever does. We sat there. The food grew cold on the counter. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one, automated, indifferent. What do you want? I asked finally. I don't know. Yes, you do. He closed his eyes. I can't keep doing this, lying, pretending. It's killing me. It's killing you, I repeated. Right. That's not what No, I get it. The lying is hard. Harder than the betrayal. Harder than the 6 months of sleeping next to me while thinking about someone else. Harder than that. Please don't. Don't what? Don't be hurt? Don't be angry? What am I supposed to do with this? He opened his mouth, closed it. He had no answer because there was no answer. We'd arrived at the place where love meets logistics, where emotion crashes into the practical realities of shared leases and joint accounts, and 6 years of building a life that now had to be carefully dismantled, piece by piece, receipt by receipt. I'll sleep downstairs tonight, he said finally. Okay. He stood, hesitated. I'm sorry. I know. I really am. I know you are. He left the room. I heard him gathering pillows from the linen closet, heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard the sound of the guest room door closing with a soft click that felt like punctuation. I sat at the table until midnight, then went to bed alone in a room that suddenly felt too large. I didn't cry. I just lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle, feeling the absence of his presence beside me like negative space. In the weeks that followed, we became architects of separation. He moved into the guest room permanently. We divided the household tasks with painful precision. He did laundry on Wednesdays. I did laundry on Saturdays. He cooked 3 nights a week. I cooked 3. And on Sundays, we fended for ourselves. We communicated through brief notes left on the counter. Paid the electric bill, and plumber coming at 2, and milk is expired. I started looking for apartments. Small places, 1-bedroom units in neighborhoods that felt like new beginnings. He met with Stephen regularly now, didn't bother hiding it. Sometimes he stayed out all night. Sometimes he came home smelling like unfamiliar soap. We agreed to separate financial accounts. Stephen, the man who'd been the ghost in our marriage, who'd known my husband's desires before I did, handled the division. How perfectly symmetrical, how cruelly appropriate. He sent emails now to both of us again, separate emails, documenting the dissolution. Here's the division of assets and sign where indicated, and this should finalize everything. I signed papers at the kitchen table while he signed them in his office. We passed folders back and forth like business partners, not lovers, not even friends. I saw him cry once. It was late, after 2 in the morning, and I'd come downstairs for water. He was in the living room, sitting in the dark, his face in his hands. I stood in the doorway watching him, and for a moment I felt the urge to comfort him, to sit beside him and say something kind. But I didn't. I got my water and went back upstairs, because his pain was not my responsibility anymore, because comfort required a trust we no longer had, because some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt from their ashes. The house went on the market in spring. We staged it carefully, removing the evidence of our life together, photos, personal items, anything that suggested 2 people had loved each other here once. It sold in a week to a young couple with a baby. They walked through the rooms talking about paint colors and furniture placement, about futures they still believed they could control. We smiled and nodded and answered their questions. We did not tell them that houses remember. We did not tell them that ghosts of failed promises live in the walls. I moved out in June. He helped me load the moving truck, which felt absurd and necessary and unbearably sad. We worked in silence, lifting boxes, carrying furniture, dividing the physical evidence of our years together. When we finished, we stood in the driveway, sweating, exhausted. "Take care of yourself," he said. "You too." He hugged me then, briefly, carefully, like hugging a stranger you once knew well. I felt his heartbeat against my chest and remembered all the times that rhythm had lulled me to sleep. Then he let go, and I got in the truck and I drove away without looking back. Some months later, I ran into a mutual friend who told me he and Stephen were living together now, in a condo downtown. She said they seemed happy. She said it carefully, watching my face for a reaction. I said that was nice. I meant it and didn't mean it simultaneously. I was glad he'd found something real, even if it had cost us everything. I was angry that happiness was possible on the other side of betrayal. I was relieved to be out. I was grieving what we'd lost. All of it true, all of it contradictory, all of it human. In the reckoning that followed, I replayed everything. I thought about the early years, when we'd been good together, before familiarity became routine, became distance. I thought about the moment when we'd stopped turning toward each other and started turning away. I couldn't pinpoint it exactly. There was no single event, no clear beginning to the end, just a gradual cooling, like water that moves from warm to lukewarm to cold without you noticing the transition. Had I been blind? Or had I simply been tired? Had I missed the signs? Or had I seen them and chosen comfort over confrontation? These questions circled my head late at night in my new apartment, where I slept alone in a bed that was mine and only mine. I wasn't blameless. I'd stopped asking him about his day. I'd stopped initiating sex. I'd stopped performing interest in his interests because my own exhaustion had consumed me. We'd become roommates who shared a bed, then roommates who shared a house, then roommates who barely spoke. But he'd made a choice. He'd chosen secrecy over honesty. He'd chosen to build something with someone else while pretending to maintain something with me. That was his. I couldn't carry that weight for him. Forgiveness felt both impossible and already present. I didn't forgive the betrayal. I'm not sure I ever will. But I forgave the human being who'd committed it. We'd both failed each other in small ways that accumulated into one large, irreparable failure. We'd loved each other, and then hadn't. And in the space between those two states, we'd caused harm. Not deliberately, not viciously, just carelessly, in the way people do when they stop paying attention. Years have passed now. I live alone in a city I'm learning to navigate. I've dated, though nothing serious. I've built a life that belongs entirely to me, my routines, my rhythms, my choices. There's freedom in that. There's also loneliness, but it's a clean loneliness, uncomplicated by betrayal or resentment. I think about him sometimes. I wonder if he's happy. I wonder if what he found with Stephen justified what he destroyed with me. I wonder if he ever lies awake at night thinking about the moment when the trust between us fractured, about the small choices that led to the larger rupture, about all the words we never said. I wonder if the accountant still sends reports, if they share finances now, if Stephen's emails arrive in both their inboxes, proof of a partnership that includes rather than excludes. I wonder these things, but I don't need answers, because some stories don't have clean resolutions. Some relationships end not with understanding, but with acceptance. You accept that love was real and also insufficient. You accept that people can hurt you without meaning to destroy you. You accept that life moves forward even when you're not ready for it to. The other day, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it. It was from Stephen. I wanted to reach out, it said. I know this is strange and you have no obligation to respond, but I've been thinking about you lately, about how all of this unfolded, and I wanted to say I'm sorry, not for falling in love. I can't apologize for that, but for the way it happened, for the pain it caused. You deserved better than to find out through missing CC lines and changed passwords. You deserved honesty, even when honesty was hard. I hope you're well. I hope you found peace. That's all. Just, I'm sorry. I read it 3 times. I closed my laptop. I made tea. I sat on my balcony watching the sunset turn the sky pink and orange and purple, thinking about accountability and amends and the strange courage it takes to apologize for something you can't undo. I never responded. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. The apology was his to give, not mine to accept or reject. It changed nothing and somehow changed everything, because it confirmed what I'd always known. We are all just people, fumbling through love and loss, trying our best and failing constantly, hurting each other and ourselves in the process. Trust ended before love did. But eventually, love ended too. And in its place came something quieter, something that feels like wisdom gained at too high a cost. I learned that betrayal doesn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it's just an email sent to one address instead of 2. Sometimes it's just a pattern that shifts so slightly you almost miss it. Sometimes it's just distance masquerading as normalcy until one day you wake up and realize you're living with a stranger. I learned that forgiveness and healing aren't the same thing. You can forgive someone and still carry the scar. You can understand why something happened and still grieve what was lost. You can move forward without moving past. Mostly, I learned this. We build our lives on faith in another person's constancy, and when that faith breaks, what remains is not hatred, but a kind of permanent tenderness toward your own younger, more trusting self. The person who believed that shared accountants and joint taxes meant shared futures. The person who thought love was enough to sustain itself without attention, without honesty, without the daily work of choosing each other. I miss that person sometimes, but I don't want to be her again. The story ends the way all stories like this end, not with resolution, but with continuation. Life moves forward. You rebuild. You learn to trust again, differently, with more caution and less illusion. You carry the past, but you don't live in it. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the light is fading and the world feels still, you think about the person who once knew your routines and your routines, who once fit beside you like the missing piece of a puzzle, who once was home. You think about them and feel not love, not anymore, but something adjacent to it. Recognition, maybe. A kind of gentle acknowledgement that you were important to each other once, even if you aren't anymore. The accountant sends reports to different addresses now. 2 lives, carefully divided, moving forward on parallel paths that will never intersect again. That's how it had to be. That's how it is. And somewhere in the mathematics of loss, in the careful tallying of what was kept and what was released, there is peace. Not the peace of happiness, but the peace of honesty, finally spoken, truth finally acknowledged, weight finally set down. I never stopped loving him. I just stopped building my life around that love.